Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is John Mathis. Hi, John.
Hey, how you doing?
John was just telling me that he has sang for President Reagan. And I just heard him sing, and it's amazing. And I'd like for him to sing on here, but I don't think he's going to. So you want to tell us about your NDE, your experiences? Where do you want to start?
Sure, we'll go there. My NDE happened in 2005, and at the time I was making a transition from being a data manager within the pharmaceutical industry to becoming a nurse. So I was taking classes and working a part-time job and being a stay-at-home dad as much as I could with all those other things going on, and just burning too much of the candle at both ends. So I ended up getting pneumonia. Then the pneumonia basically shut down my lungs. It became ARDS, acquired respiratory distress syndrome. A lot of times firemen get that because they breathe in chemicals when they're in fires, or sometimes when a steering wheel airbag deploys, it happens so fast it smacks your lungs, and it kind of causes shock. But basically your lungs say, hey, there's crap in here I got to get rid of, and so it just floods the lungs trying to wash it out, and so you're just constantly coughing up stuff. Ironically, I think the 2005 near-death experience saved me in 2020 when I got COVID, because I was prepared for all the lung trauma and coughing and things that I would acquire. So, but the near-death experience from from the clinical perspective was so yeah, my lungs shut down. It became ARDS. Then my kidneys and my heart followed suit. So they kept hooking me up to machines to keep me alive. And the funny thing is that I was having out of body experiences at this point. So I was hovering above my body and checking people out as they would come in and out of the room. I knew that my mom had flown up from Florida, and she's in a wheelchair / scooter type thing. So for her to be there in Indianapolis was a big deal. But yeah, so it was like in my conscious state floating above my bed. I saw my ex-wife in one corner. I saw my mom in another corner. I saw doctors and nurses coming in and out. My daughter was trying to paint my toenails and curl up my hair and put in little barrettes into my hair. And I had a couple of longtime college buddies show up out of the woodwork to kind of, say their last goodbyes. And I was in a coma at the time. So I was able to tell them, hey, I knew you were here, and this is what you said, and this is what you did. And I was teasing my daughter, how dare you put barrettes in my hair, type of thing. So yeah, I was aware of what was going on, even though my physical body was hooked up to machines. So after they took me off the machines, and that was about 15 days worth of coma, I was still on a nasal cannula, or like the hose that goes like around your nose, giving me supplemental oxygen, but I wasn't required a machine to breathe for me. And at that point, I was lying in bed. It was about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, this sucks. This is about as close as I'm going to get to a near-death experience without actually, kind of tripping over the threshold, and being going from not quite dead yet to all the way dead.
I assume you weren't able to communicate with anybody, like you were enclosed in yourself, like, and then going out.
it was kind of like a stone skipping across a pond of consciousness, um, because it's like I would be aware that my ex was there, and then I'd blink, and then my daughter was there with one of her friends, and it was hours or days later, and then I blink, and then now my mom was there, and other family members were there, and my ex was gone. So it was just kind of like these little snippets of reality.
Cool. I mean, it sounds cool now, at the time it's dangerous, but
At the time,
interesting.
I didn't give a damn. At the time, I was kind of like looking at it all, and it was kind of funny, because it was like, my mom and my ex didn't get along, so it was funny that they were the opposite sides of the room.
Huh.
It was funny that my daughter was trying to paint my toenails. Um, the the fact that some of my college friends, it's like, we tried to get together and we were always too busy. But, now that I'm dying, you can make time to come see me. And I'm like, thanks, man. You suck. So I was not caught up in the emotion of it all as much as I was looking at everyone kind of playing their parts, and I was kind of chuckling about it.
Okay.
So, but my near-death experience was kind of funky. I didn't see God or Jesus or Buddha, Kuan Yin, whatever. I saw George Carlin, the comedian.
Now, you went from these little snapshots in and out to what? Or was there a transition?
So while I was on life support and unconscious, well, I should say while I was in a coma, my consciousness was detached. And so I was above my body. I was watching people coming in and out of the room. Sometimes I'd follow doctors and nurses out of the room to hear the conversations they were having. But it wasn't until they extubated me, or they took me off the breathing machine and just put me on supplemental oxygen. And I think that was about 15 days later. That's when I was like lying there in bed thinking, this is as close as I can get to being dead and not be dead. I'm surprised I didn't have a near-death experience. And so I did. The whole traditional thing, went through a tunnel of light, was in a very light white space. In this space, there was something brighter than bright, whiter than white. And so I asked, what are you? And it said, I'm everything. And I'm like, well, that's cool. And then there was this like little silver tendril or thread that came out from it and touched my forehead. And the best way I can describe it is like going from AOL dial up from 2001 to, a VPN or a dial up that we have now. It was just the information moved faster, the information moved easier. There was a much wider bandwidth. And so that's what started basically this back and forth communication of, here's a little bit of information. And then they kind of like slow it down and look at me like, all right, did you take it? Okay, we'll give you more. And so there was this kind of like reciprocity of me accepting what they gave me, and then they made it faster and more, and the pipeline just kept getting bigger and bigger, until finally I remember saying, oh, I get it. You're trying to tell me that everything is connected and I'm part of this everything. And then that's when there was like explosion of light, and I saw, best way I describe it is like a soccer ball. But in all the places where the edges came together were like nodes of light. And so I was part of this connectivity. And the nodes were, my dad or my grandpa or a rock or a school I went to 20 years ago, um, people I had met, um, some guy that I had stopped and helped with a flat tire. It was like maybe it was a life review, but instead of watching it like a film, for me it was like a in computers, so sometimes they'll call it a tag cloud, and essentially it's like a snowflake or a soccer ball, and where like all the points come together, that's a node, and that's where you meet something significant. And so I just ran around this soccer ball and checked out all the nodes. And like I said, no, there's grandpa, there's my dog from 25 years ago, there's a friend of mine, there's this person I helped. And then once I got it, then the soccer ball was like completely unveiled. And there was just like millions upon millions of these nodes. And that's when I really got the understanding that, um, the chaos theory, like a butterfly flaps its wings in India and, a hurricane occurs, here off the coast of the United States. It's all tied together. It's just sometimes in our human understanding, we don't see it.
Hmm. So you got this information through these, what you're calling nodes, and what was it like in the tunnel, to back up a little bit? What did you see, hear, feel? I mean, was there color?
The tunnel was pretty traditional. I mean, it was just kind of like this white tunnel. And I've got previous experience with other buddy stuff. I started doing remote viewing when I was 14. So that disassociative experience of separating the conscious self and the physical self, I already knew that. And so I knew that was kind of what was going on. But when I do remote viewing, I still see my body. And when I was doing the near death experience, it was no body. It was just consciousness. It was like when I looked, because one of the things I do when I do remote viewing is I look down, and it was like, am I still me? And I look at my shoes. And it's like, are these my shoes or is this another set of shoes? And then that tells me, oh, I might be in a previous iteration or a former lifetime. And so it helps me kind of identify, is this me doing this, or is this the conscious me in another body, in another meat suit, kind of looking around and seeing, what am I up to? So that's how I knew it was different, because I didn't have a body.
Okay. I mean, even though you didn't have a body, did you feel you were still you, or a point of reference, or?
I still thought I was me. And, again, the same traditional going through the tunnel, you're going through this tunnel and you don't know if you're going 10 miles an hour or 1,000 miles an hour. You get a sensation of movement, but I mean, there's nothing there. So you don't know, there's no white lines on the road to say, wow, these are going by really fast.
There's no color or sound?
All white.
Oh, white.
And
okay.
No sound.
Okay. And then you were just in bright white?
Correct.
But not the movement. Was you like still, quiet?
It was like being in a white room. And again, because there was nothing there for reference, I don't know if it was an igloo or if it was an airplane hangar.
So it felt like a smaller space. You were contained in a space, not a big wide.
It had no feeling.
Oh, okay.
I didn't feel compressed, because I've done that before. It's like when I do remote viewing, sometimes I'll hop into an object, like someone says, hey, I lost my passport. So I'll project into that passport, and then it's like I feel what that passport feels, and that helps me identify where it's at. There was no feeling with this. There was no sensation one way or the other.
What was the first thing in that white light that said, I'm everything? Was that right away?
Yep.
Or was, okay. Was there any thoughts of anything before that?
Again, I was like in this white space and I saw something whiter than white.
Okay.
And I was like, huh, I wonder what that is. And as soon as I had the thought, I wonder what that is, the response I got back was, I'm everything.
Was it audible? Was it telepathic? Do you think, did you hear
I
a
think it was
different?
telepathic,
Okay. Do you
just
know?
because the longer I was over there, the less human I felt
Okay.
and the more energetic things felt. I felt like there was more about energy passing back and forth as opposed to verbal language.
Can you explain these nodes to me so I understand what it looked like or felt like or anything?
Yeah, so imagine you're driving down the highway and, at the next exit you come to, there's a McDonald's. And then the next exit is a gas station. And then the next exit is, the library. Depending upon where you want to go, dictates which exit you get off on. Same thing when I was traveling through these nodes. As I was traveling through these areas, when I get to a node, it was the equivalent of an off ramp. So like when I got to one node, that node was my grandfather. And he was my primary caregiver growing up until I was 12. So, I didn't hear him, but I knew the energy that was him. And so it was almost like a puppy being let outside after being in a crate for too long. Because I just remember being fascinated by these nodes. And so I wanted to see them all that I could. And so I just kept bebopping around from one to the other. Oh, there's Grandpa. Oh, there's my dog. And
So there was no visual perception or seeing. It was a perception of.
correct.
Okay.
My five human senses were not engaged. There was something else. There was an energy signature that was familiar, and it had an emotional context. So when I showed up to a node, my grandpa was my first best friend. And he taught me how to pray and cuss in German, and which my grandma loved. But he was my first best friend. And so there's an energy to that. I guess maybe a way to say it is that those memories that had been dormant were rekindled while I was at that node. And so I was like, oh, that's what this is. And this is who this is. And so as soon as I identified it, I just moved on to the next and the next and the next and the next.
I'm comparing it in my mind. I don't know if it's accurate, but like all of a sudden, I know my mother-in-law that's passed. I know she's right there. Can't see her, but it's almost I can, like, and I know where she's at. Like she's standing right there and there's somebody with her. That's all I know. And so I'm wondering if it's like that. It's just like it's appear, knowing, a feeling, but I'm sure it's stronger because you're on the other side.
Yeah, I smell sawdust when my great grandpa is around, and I smell lily of the valley when my grandma is around, and I hear farting when my dad is around. Thank God I only hear it as opposed to any other sensory application.
Oh, it's funny. So did that proceed then, these nodes, and then what?
So I went through all the nodes and made my declaration. Oh, you want me to realize everything is connected to everything, and I'm part of that everything. And there was not just a singular voice, but a choir of voices that kind of said and sang, he gets it. And so once I had that kind of, in retrospect, I think what was going on is they said, okay, he's at a bandwidth that we can talk to him now. We've brought him up to speed. We brought him out of his human, slow telegraph technology to our T1 DSL bandwidth, Wi-Fi bandwidth. And then that's when there was a scene change, and I am standing in the middle of a soccer field. And if you're a Harry Potter fan, you'll get the reference. And if you're not, then you won't. But as I look around, I realize that it's not really a soccer field, it's a Quidditch field. And so they're pretty much the same thing, except instead of a goal at each end, you have 3 rings that are elevated. And while you're flying around your broom, you throw a ball into those rings and get points. So I'm a big Harry Potter fan. I'm 6'5", 270. So I make a pretty mean Hagrid if you're into the movies and such. In my boots, I'm 6'7", so I could scare kids at will, and I like that. But anyway, the Quidditch pitch is there, and I'm looking in the stadium, and the people are a mix of everything from Greek people wearing togas to modern day people wearing the clothes we wear today. But the stadium is filled with people, and the stadium extends up into the clouds. And standing next to me is this same, white energy entity that said, I am everything. And so in my mind, I said, what should I call you? And then it became George Carlin.
I don't know who
Now,
that is.
the funny thing is, George Carlin was still alive. So whatever it was that I was interfacing with, I don't know if it was George Carlin's soul, or I don't know if someone scanned my memory banks and said, if we show this guy God or Jesus, he's going to think this is bad sushi from a gas station or something. So let's show him something that he'll actually listen to. And I'm a big George Carlin fan. I'm kind of late to the party, being born in the late 60s. But George Carlin made a comment a long time ago. He said, I was a practicing Catholic until I reached the age of reason. And I kind of, I'm kind of with that as someone who got kicked out of classes by nuns on a fairly regular basis. I tuned into that. So to see George kind of made sense for me. And to have the mechanics of the universe explained to me in a way George Carlin would do it. Because like with the nodes, he's like, dude, you got to come over here and check out this shit. It's really cool. And I'm like, okay, take me over there. Let's go check that out. But as I'm standing there in the soccer pitch and this whiteness all of a sudden becomes George Carlin, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting.
Well, he said he's everything.
Yeah.
So if he wants to be him, he'll be him, right? If he's alive or dead, he can do what he wants.
Well, they say, judge the message and not the messenger. Mm-hmm. But I would have had so much dissonance if it was, Charlton Heston looking guy or, the God cartoon from Monty Python. I may have listened to that. But so he looks up into the crowd and says, hey, everybody, this is John. And the whole place goes, hi, John. Like a baseball stadium or something like that. And so I wave back at everybody. And then he goes, hey, everybody, guess what? John's from Earth. And the whole place went, ooh. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Ooh. why are you, because it was like, ooh, like they'd saw like really great fireworks. Ooh, ah. And so I was like, you guys are like the heavenly host. How are you going ooh at this? And again, as soon as you think something, wham, it comes right back at you. And so what I got was Earth is like the wild, wild west. And it's one of the hardest places for a soul to incarnate. And once you're here, part of the rules is you have to forget everything you know. And so you come in stupid and confused. It's almost like showing up drunk to a frat party, you know? Oh God, now what? But they actually explained to that there, and again, so much data was conveyed in a split second that I could go on and on about this. But basically what it boiled down to was Earth is a hard place. Not every soul can come here. Some, supervisor or guardian angel or whatever you want to call them will say, nah, you're not ready. You're going to get hurt if you go there. But they'll still let you go if you insist, which really kind of sucks. Because when I see my guardian angel, I'm pretty sure I'm going to punch him in the throat when I see him. So when I got there and they're saying like, oh, Earth is really hard. You have to be an advanced soul. You have to get like executive privilege to be here. I'm like, so everyone here has to have already passed all these other criteria. And they're like, yeah. There are some souls that they would rather spend a millennia reading books than spend one lifetime here on Earth because it is so potentially devastating. And I'm like, well, give me more information on that. And again, I got a slew of information, but it basically boils down to there are plenty of places to be a physical existence. There's plenty of places to be a spiritual existence. There's plenty of places to be both. Earth is one of the very few places that has both, but also has duplicity. And what you see is not what you get. And people are dishonest. And the challenge of Earth is to continue your soul's development and growth and continue to trust and love in an environment that tries to shatter your trust and love. So that's what the big game was about here. And so that's why they're like, so for you to be here and you're from Earth, that's why we're impressed. Because there's some of us in the audience will never go there. It's like when we go by Earth, we lock the doors.
Some of them that were there would never go to Earth. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
The observers. Okay.
Yeah. So some of the spirits that were there, and again, I'm assuming because not everyone was dressed in a toga, that some of them were souls that had gone and come back a few times. And that's why I was seeing the difference in the age or the era of the clothing being represented. Because I don't think age in that reality is real. I may look at a person that's 12 years old, but they may be 10,000 years old and have 50 lifetimes under their belt. So age just doesn't apply over there. But yeah, so they were really impressed that I was from Earth. They were really impressed that some of the stuff that I had done up to that point in my life, I had achieved. And this is where the story gets interesting. So this happened in 2005. And then there's a split in the story because I can diverge off into what I later learned happened in 2012, or I can stick with the narrative of 2005. And the reason why I do that is that, you know, if you've ever watched these like science fiction movies or Inception or something like that, where there's two timelines going on.
Mhm.
I had the near-death experience in 2005. And then in 2009, I had shared near-death experience. I also got my Reiki master attunement, to which Archangel Michael showed up. So I was told. And that was 09. But in 12 was when I had another visitation, and the whole near-death experience, it was like they gave me another chapter. It's like they opened a file folder that was previously locked down. So in my first understanding of the near-death experience, after George introduced me to everybody and everybody told me how great and wonderful I was to be willing to adventure into the earth plane, and that everybody in the earth plane is an advanced soul, whether they remember it or not. And they all have roles to play. And sometimes you need to be the villain so that the other person can be the hero. Sometimes you need to be the victim, but in order to be a victim, you need to have a perpetrator. And so, again, when you're an infinite source of soul energy, one blink of a meat suit iteration is meaningless, nearly meaningless at least. But then it was like, oh, I've got to go back now. And so I ended up kind of decelerating in my bandwidth of understanding. And as my bandwidth slowed down to more of a human level, then things just kind of faded away. And then, you know, boink, I wake up in my hospital bed. What really happened, though, was that after George introduced me, I was again engaging with the audience and asking about, why are you so impressed with me? Why is Earth such a scary place? Why won't you go there? During this conversation, I was hearing music. And music for me is another language, in the sense that I started singing when I was 6. I started singing German when I was 6 because my grandfather was German. And so I'm singing in German and English at 6 years old, which is kind of what led me into the opera pathway that I went to. But music's been a part of my life since I was 6. And so when I'm standing there, you know, wherever that was, the Quidditch pitch, the soccer pitch / heaven's, you know, holding room, this music was just gorgeous. It was choir and orchestral music at the same time. And it was just, I don't have words to convey how beautiful it was. But as I was listening to it, in my mind, I thought, I want to be closer to that. And so I was. I completely left George, completely left the soccer pitch, floated up into where the music was coming from. And it was coming from these ovals of light. And they kind of looked like a squashed surfboard. And they all looked like they were made out of a pearlescent type of material, like a very pastel neon. So there was a glow and energy about them, but there was nothing bright and vibrant. It was all pastels, very soft and smooth, and, you know, baby blues and dusty roses and pinks and things. But this is where this music was originating from. And so I wanted to be a part of that. I'd been singing nearly my entire life. So I was like, oh, I can hear a bass line. Let me jump in there with this. Well, as I joined them in song, I realized I was becoming less human and I was becoming more of an oval shape. And I think if I was left to my own devices, my physical body would have died and I would have proceeded into heaven in that direction. Instead, as I feel my humanness kind of like shaking off and getting more into the rapturous feeling of this music, all of a sudden I felt like a tug, like someone grabbed the back of my shirt. Okay, buddy, wait. That's too far. And then I was like, again, I was decelerated. I was back into my human form. I was back standing there in front of George. And again, I felt this like pulling on the back of my shirt. And so I turn around to see, who this was. And it was Archangel Michael. And to me, he was like, 7 foot tall, muscular, flaming sword, had this kind of like bandolier going across his chest of jewels that glowed, big wings. I mean, pretty much something out of, central casting from, Hollywood. But I looked at him and he looked at me and he had this kind of like lopsided grin on his face. And he put a hand on each of my shoulders, looked me in the eye and said, "You belong to us now." Okay. I don't know exactly what that means, but okay.
Wow.
I would come to find out later. I think I know what that means. Later on in life, I was using Reiki to clean a house that was had a couple of ghosts kind of loitering. And there was something there that was pretending to be a ghost, but it was something a lot older and a lot more energetically negative. And I thought I could clear it out, and then I realized it's like a couple of pay grades above what I know. And at that point, it tried to step into my body, which I think maybe was a possession, not sure. But when that happened, all of a sudden, there was like this bright light. I was filled with indignation that was also sacred, if that can make any sense. How dare you try to step into this soul? But yeah, Michael showed up and he's got his flaming sword and he looks pissed and his jewels are glowing. And yeah, so that energy left me, left the house, bought a ticket to Georgia and was, gone. The next day, I'm dreaming and I hear a knock at the door in my dream. So I get out of bed and I go answer the door in my dream. I open the door. It's Archangel Michael. He's wearing a karate outfit, like the loose tunic top and the white, jogging pants type thing. Birkenstocks for sandals. And he comes in, he's like, "Hey, we need to talk." Okay. So I go to the fridge in my dream. I grab us a beer. We sit down on the couch in the chair in the living room. We drink a beer and he proceeds to tell me to don't ever be that fucking stupid again. That was his message to me. It's like, this is an angelic message? Really? And he's like, "Hey, I've got to say what you'll understand." Like, okay. So yeah, that's when I kind of hung up my my hat as far as going through and participating in exorcisms or things that are above my pay grade.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to play with dark forces.
Yeah, no.
No, dark people's bad enough.
Well, I see. I think that's part of the thing. So one of the things I got in the message before I left, George looked at me and he goes, "You take yourself way too seriously. Would you just go play?" what? He's like, just go play. I made you a playground. Go play.
Huh. Was that at the end of the
Okay.
NDE or the dream?
That was the end of the NDE.
Okay.
As I was decelerating and I felt myself coming back to Earth and everything else was fading away, the last thing I saw was George. And that was one of his last messages to me was,
Go
don't
play.
take yourself too seriously. Just enjoy the place. And it took me a couple years to kind of figure it out. But I think that's what's going on here on Earth, is that Earth is an amusement park. And if you want to get on the ride that is, I'm a party hound and I'm drinking every weekend and cursing every Monday, all right, that's your ride. I want to go to college and I want to get a nursing degree and I want to participate in pharmaceutical research. Okay, that's your ride. And so whether you want to have a happy life, a sad life, a complicated life, there are rides here exactly for that. For a while, I was getting really upset with our last president and how he treated people that weren't old white men. And as an old white man, it was like, I really shouldn't be bitching because everything he's doing benefits me. But that is a very narrow focus. And so the people that are near and dear to me who aren't old white men made me angry. But then I realized it's just another ride in the amusement park. And so I can get my knickers in a twist and be all upset about it and, go out and protest and carry a sign and whatever. But it is my choice. It is part of my free will that God has given me to participate in that or not participate in that. And as a result of that, so many people got activated. So many people got off their butts. So many people got involved with society beyond sitting on their couch eating Cheetos and clicking a button on the computer or trolling someone's page. They actually got out into the world, got some vitamin D from the sun, and engaged in their beliefs as opposed to espousing them and not practicing them. And so I don't care what your political party is, it was a good thing. Anything that encourages human development and practicing your creed, whatever that may be, those are good things.
So at 14, you were doing out of body stuff, astral projection, or 12? What did you
Yeah, I was a
say?
weird kid.
How did that come about?
The first time it happened, I was actually 12, and my dad was a very much spare the rod, spoil the child mentality. So whatever transgression I had committed, the belt was involved. And in the midst of that beating, all of a sudden I was not in my body anymore. I was above my body. And there was no pain. And it was just kind of curiosity. Oh, this is what's going on. It was almost like I was watching a TV show of my dad being angry and beating me with a belt as I'm lying on the floor. And as I'm watching this, it was like, wow, that's interesting. It's interesting from a bunch of perspectives. One, my dad was repeating something that happened to him as a child. Two, he was installing a software routine into me that I would have to fight later. And that this was a software routine I had asked for. So there's an old Indian kind of like the old two wolves thing, the one you feed. There's another saying that the point or the purpose of your parents when you're selecting them in your pre-corporeal state is to have them install the sacred wound. And the sacred wound is the thing that will drive you in this lifetime, in this meat suit. And so a lot of the things that I chased and discovered had to do with my childhood of abuse. So on one, growing up, it was like, it's all dad's fault because he did it. And as I got older and got more metaphysical, I realized in order for me to be who I am today and help the people that I'm helping today, I had to have that childhood so that it would open up my capacity for empathy. And it also gives me ownership. So I now am no longer the victim of what dad perpetrated. I am now the owner of a set of experiences that I asked the soul who played my father to give me.
How did you come to think that?
Years of therapy, medication, and alcohol.
Okay.
No, so I
Honest
had this
answer.
out-of-body experience when I was 12. And then at 14, I'm riding my bike through the neighborhood and someone was having a garage sale. And so I stopped in and, checked them out because there were books there. And so books were my friends. And I found all these really cool books. One was called The Naked Ape by Desmond Morris. And his postulate was humans don't belong on Earth because all the other primates have hair and they don't need clothing, but humans need clothing. So where did we come from? Maybe we don't belong on Earth. Maybe we were transplanted from someplace else. Well, at 14, I was thinking naked ape. I was hoping to see naked women, but there was no pictures. So that book got read later. The next book I picked up was Illusions by Richard Bach. And it was basically two guys flying biplanes, and the first guy figures out that the second guy is actually the second coming of Jesus Christ. But considering how he got treated the first time, I'm sure that Yelp review of his first trip was, 1 star. But star David. So, but he was hesitant to let people know he was the second coming of the Messiah. And so there was all of that angst of, do I tell people or do I not this time? Do I slowly roll this out to humanity? Or, do I do like the last time, get a posse and go on tour?
And get crucified.
That was a pretty interesting book for me. So I did read that one. But the second one that I read was Far Journeys by Robert Monroe. And he talks about his experience with astral projection in such a way that it was almost like an instruction manual. And so as a 14-year-old kid living in this, the sticks of Indiana, our closest neighbor was a quarter mile away, and in between us were 6 horses in a pasture. So not a lot going on. So if I could remote view and go places, that would be awesome. Um, if I could go check out family and friends that are throughout the country, that would be awesome. Um, and so at 14, it was like, okay, I've got this instruction manual. Let me grip it and rip it and see what happens. And I was able to do it. Half the time I was falling asleep and, end up with drool on my pillow. But the other half of the time I was actually going places.
So how did you
So that
prepare
out of
yourself?
body experience, at a young age made my near death experience kind of like, nah, I know what this is.
So how did you do it? How did you do the remote viewing? How did you psych yourself up or what? I don't know anything. Like, is it a meditation and go out like almost to a sleep point or?
Yeah. So I teach people, this via remote viewing. I'm lucky enough to live in Durham, North Carolina. The Rhine Research Center is here. Um, they teach remote viewing at the Rhine, as well as a bunch of other paranormal things. Uh, but what I would do is I would set my alarm for 15 minutes and I would go and try to meditate. Um, but usually when you're slowing down your mind, you just immediately fall asleep because you don't have any other intention. So the trick is learning when you get to that state where you're half awake, half asleep. It's kind of like if you're at work and it's 3 o'clock and you had a big lunch, and you're just kind of like really trying to pay attention and you're kind of drift off, or like, maybe you're in a teleconference and all of a sudden you hear yourself snore and you catch yourself and then you're back awake. If you learn where that space is, that's where you can do all this really cool stuff. And if people don't practice it, you just don't know it. And so you can come at it through meditation, same thing, slowing your mind, getting rid of the monkey mind, let it pass through. You're physiologically, you're changing your brain's cycles per second. You're slowing it down. And so you go from multitasking to single tasking to kind of daydreaming to kind of, wow, I'm really yawning and I'm not quite sure. I mean, I know I'm awake, but I also, don't know what's going on in the room. When you can get to that state and then stay there, that's where you can do astral projection. That's where you can do remote viewing. That's where you can do, all of the out of body type stuff. And remote viewing is easier because you usually have a handler there that kind of can prod you. So when you get too far down, your handler's like, okay, remember, we still have a task. We still need to go find whatever. And so they can bring you back.
I live in Southeast Ohio, so my kids, of course, not into any of this stuff. Nobody I know around here is, but one of my kids told me a few months ago, they suddenly have started this thing. They don't know what's happening, but they get up out of bed, which they're still asleep, but they get out of bed and they're walking around the house, check on the kids, walk downstairs, walk back upstairs. They're seeing everything going on, but they're still asleep. But it's like they've just got up and are walking around, and they never actually physically got up out of bed. I didn't want to tell them.
So that my personal experience was that's when I discovered my consciousness and my physical meat suit are a Venn diagram. They share a reality while I'm conscious, but my consciousness can be directed away from my body. And so anybody who meditates can sometimes have that. That's again, one of the other things I teach is that there is more than a near-death experience to have that out-of-body experience and have that kind of satori, that epiphany, that awakening, that ecstasy, spiritual aha. You can do it through fasting, medication, prayer, meditation. Hell, I remember reading a story, a woman who it happened when she orgasmed. Anything that kind of creates that dissonance between your physical self and your consciousness, if you have the intention of an awareness of saying, I know my consciousness is different in my body. I can leave my body here to rest and recuperate, but my mind can do other things. And so some people call dreaming in the sense that we pull in 10% of our conscious reality, but all of the other things we didn't pay attention to that are under peripheral vision, or the things we didn't pick up on that were double entendres, or sometimes people who are mentalists will, start seeding your ideas subconsciously so that you come up with the idea on your own, but you really didn't. All of those things get processed while you're sleeping because your five senses said, okay, we're taking a time out for the next 5 to 8 hours. And so that other processing can occur, but that consciousness isn't limited to that. One of the first things I discovered was I thought I was asleep in my bed at 14, 15 years old. But I'd get up, go downstairs and see what the dog was doing and see, what was, on the school menu, because we had our school menu posted on the refrigerator. I wonder, tomorrow's pizza day. Woo woo. It started out with really benign things like that. And after I got practice at it, then I'm doing crazy shit like, hey, I wonder if I can go off planet. Hey, I wonder if I can go backward or forward in time. Hey, I wonder what's hidden underground, on here or on another planet. And then all of a sudden you start meeting all these, Star Wars characters who also do what you do. They're just not human.
Did you want to get into that shared near-death experience?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, I had my near-death experience in 2005 when I was studying to become a nurse. In 2008, I graduated, became a nurse, and went into oncology and hematology. The hospital I was at in Indianapolis, I can't remember what the terminology was, but if you were at another hospital in Indiana and you failed first line cancer treatment, then they sent you to us because we had more resources and we had more stuff. So when people came to us, they were already sometimes advanced. They were stage 3, stage 4, not, they weren't easy ones. They weren't stage 1. So sometimes you have hard discussions, as a, didn't know we're going to go here. So as a nurse, I am your healthcare proxy. While you're laying in bed recovering from surgery and radiation and medicines that make you puke, I represent you. And so if you want to wave off a treatment, I make it happen. If you want to bring in other professionals, I make it happen. If you want to bring in a Reiki master or bring in aromatherapy or massage therapist, I make it happen. And so I would have conversations with my patients and it's like, what are we doing? Are we fighting to stay or are we fighting to leave? Because for the next 12 hours, I'm your minion. And I will go out and I will do whatever it is to make that happen. So some of those situations were people who were ready to go. This might have been their second or third time with cancer. They'd already been decimated the first 2 or 3 times, or 1 or 2 times, and they were done. And so my responsibility as a nurse was to make sure that their passing was as easy as possible and as respectful as possible. In those instances, what should have been a sad moment, I felt this wave of euphoria come up in me. And I was so happy for them. You know, the race was done. This meat suit trial and tribulation was done. You are finally getting to go home. And so sometimes there were family members or other healthcare practitioners in the room while this was going on. And so I had to quell that sensation of wanting to jump up and go, yeah, you did it. You made it. Go for it. But still maintain that kind of solemn demeanor. But at the same time, it's like I would see a white light or a white gateway or an oval just kind of like appear in the room, like a dimmer switch got turned on. And it was like, whoa, all of a sudden there's this portal. And because I'd had my near-death experience, it was like that energy. It was like, oh, I know what that is. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, you know, smelling cookies when you come in. It's like, right. Oh, I know what that is. Yeah. And so it's like, I just felt that kind of pull and I'm like, oh, I know what that is, but that's not for me. It's for them. But we had a relationship. I mean, sometimes, cancer is not a quick recovery. Sometimes I had patients for 2 or 3 months. And so I get to know them. You know, I just don't go in and give my meds and leave. It's like, how are you doing? And what's going on? And what did you learn today? And do you have any questions? And sometimes it's just sitting at the end of their bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and just listen to them vent. And so there's more to nursing than passing meds. And beyond the science, I think there's the art. And so in that art, I was listening to their needs and listening to their concerns and their wants and their fears and trying to address that to the point, well, now they're no longer verbal. And so all I can do is be there in the room or hold their hand. Or as a Reiki master, it was like I would open up and it's like, I'm going to give you whatever you want. If you want no Reiki, fine. You want to redirect it to your family members that are having problems with your transition, fine. If you need it for you, fine. Just here I am. And in those moments, it was like they invited me to come with them up the tunnel. And so I would go into this portal. And they would no longer be the physicality that was racked by cancer 2 or 3 times. They were hale and robust versions of themselves. A lot of times younger, not always, but a lot of times younger. But I'm traveling with them side by side, going up the tunnel, and I see their friends that have passed, or, you know, I see the dog, or, you know, things that brought them happiness. And as they experience that happiness, they share that energy with me. And so now I've got the euphoria, not only of, oh, I'm back in this space, but now I'm sharing in their euphoria of, oh my God, finally I can go home. And so there was like 2 or 3 steps up the tunnel with that. And then it was like, okay, I can't go any further. And there's no one that told me that. It was just somehow I just inherently knew this is as far as I go. But by that time, the people that were their loved ones that were waiting on them, they weren't just kind of like misty, opaque figures. They were now solid and clear, and I could tell you exactly what they looked like and what the color of their eyes were and what they were wearing. And
Very
that's
cool.
when they gather them up and take them the rest of the way up. So yeah, that happened to me twice after my near-death experience.
Very cool. That's a
Yeah,
very cool
well,
gift.
and I'm covered with goosebumps now. Think I haven't thought about that in a long time. But yeah, you don't forget mystical experiences.
No, no, but that's amazing.
Yeah, it was a hootenanny. I mean, for a while, I'm not going to lie. I mean, for a while, it was a real sphincter wrinkler because I was trying to figure out. Is that a new one? Is that a new one to you?
Oh, my husband will love that one.
Yeah. So just for clarification, any muscle you have that affects an orifice is a sphincter muscle. So your mouth has a sphincter muscle, your eye sockets have a sphincter muscle, but we all know the brown one. So sometimes when sometimes when I come across a mental chew toy, you purse your mouth, or you may frown, or you kind of like, So in my mind, it's like, oh, that was a real sphincter wrinkler. And then I realized what that would sound like out loud to other people.
Yeah,
And I busted my ass laughing. So I was like, okay, I got to add that into my conversations.
into your
Yeah,
vocabulary.
it was a real sphincter wrinkler because I was like, how am I having this sensation? I'm perfectly healthy. I just went through this a couple of years ago. Why am I seeing this stuff? And there was actually a while I thought maybe I'd broken my brain. I thought maybe I had crossed some threshold and had gone crazy or was starting the process of crazy. My mom's mom was one of 18 kids, and 5 of them had mental health issues. So I'm wondering, okay, well, maybe I'm going crazy. Well, I should at least enjoy the ride,
I have
kind
a
of
mentally disabled sister, so I know that feeling. Like, am I gonna, is that what this is? It's kind of late in life to have that, but is that what it is?
well, and part of that I think has too been my childhood. Again, um, I was told as a child that if I told anybody that I was being abused, that the state would take me, they would send me away to military school, and I would never see my family again. And so I had to cultivate 2 realities. I had the reality that I showed the public, and I had the reality that happened at home. And again, as a child, that sounds really sad, but as an adult, it has served me immensely well because I have 2 lives. I have the very left brain pharmaceutical researcher, database designer, cancer research nurse, um, very logically grounded. But on the other side, here's this dude that, my first ghost experience, I saw my grandpa after he died when I was 11. And then I was doing astral projection at 14. And then I was doing paranormal investigation at 19. And then Reiki. And it was almost like a metaphysical whack-a-mole, something would happen to me and I'd tell my parents about it. And my Catholic mom and my Baptist dad was like, oh, hell to the no. When I first told them about spirit communication, my mom's response was to invite the priest over for dinner.
When I was a teenager, it's called "You're going to be sent upriver," is what they called it here. You're
Okay.
going to be sent to juvie. You're going to go to juvenile correction till you're 18. Because back then in the 70s, they could send you for just running away,
Yeah.
skipping
Yeah.
school, being caught drinking, anything, breaking any rule. you can be sent up river, is what they called it, to juvie till you're 18. So I never told anything. I just walked the line because I don't want to be sent up river. Because I had been put in when I ran away, which caused me to get on probation, be given that ultimatum, those rules or threat, whatever it was. And I knew enough. I didn't like staying at that group home. And so I'd seen enough, and I didn't want to be at home either with abuse. So it's kind of like, but I no way was I going to be sent up river because I want to graduate high school. I didn't think I would graduate high school. I don't graduate high school yet. I want to be beat up by other girls in jail. I want to go to prison. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I saw a refrigerator magnet that said challenging childhoods make for interesting adults. I don't think I've seen a truer statement anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because so one of the ways I compensated for my near-death experience was I discovered a group called IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And so I wrote to them and said, hey, I'm a clinical researcher, but I'm also an experiencer. Is there some way that I can help? And they're like, hell to the yeah. So I signed a non-disclosure agreement, and they gave me over 200 interviews with people who thought they had had a near-death experience. And so from these 200 interviews, I created a database. And so it's like, well, how many women are having them versus how many men? What religion did they have? What was their educational background? What changes did they have? And this eventually got presented in 2013 or 15 by Dr. Bruce Grayson, who's kind of taken on the near-death experience mantle from Dr. Ray Moody. Which I met him, and he was a hoot. In my near-death experience, I also got about a bunch of sacred geometry. At first, I got Reiki symbols, but then it got really weird and started showing me different stuff. And Ray Moody was at a bookstore in St. Pete. And so I drove up from Sarasota to St. Pete with my 5 books. And as he's signing my books, I'm like, so you've had a few near-death experiences that you've looked into? And he's like, uh-huh. I said, how many near-death experiences are you aware of where they were given sacred geometry and sacred symbols? He literally stopped writing his name on one of my books and like moved his head up and like, I've never heard of that. And so like there's like people standing behind me like wanting their books signed, and he's wanting to carry on a conversation now. Well, what were these symbols and what do they look like and what do they do and how do you perceive them? And I love that at that advanced age and thousands of cases under his belt, he was still inspired and had that youthful energy when it comes to discovery. And, oh, there's something new I haven't learned. And that's something that he taught me in that moment without words, is that I want to continue being that way myself. I don't ever want to get to a point where I'm like, all right, I've learned everything there needs to know. I'm a professional now. No, I mean, that's why I still balk at Reiki Master. I'll say Reiki 3 more than Reiki Master, because I don't think I've mastered a damn thing.
So you saw symbols in your NDE?
Yes.
Okay. Might look at a past podcast I did like a week ago with James. He shows some of his artwork that he's come back with from his near-death experience. I don't know if you would call it symbols, but yeah, it's not really pictures. I guess you would call it symbols. Just see what you think. See if there's anything that connects or
I
resembles.
discovered about 2 months after the fact that one of them was a Merkaba or a Merkaba. But essentially it's the Star of David. It's one pyramid that intersects another pyramid. If you look at it in 3-dimensional space, or in 2-dimensional space, it's the Star of David. But I saw it, it was rotating, and it was a purple neon color. And so later on in life, I was meditating and that form would appear. And so, oh, okay, well, then I would hold that in my mind while I meditated. And what that ended up being was a really, really smart dude. He felt like a physician slash professor, but he was ancient. Um, and so he was telling me about earth changes and things that were going on. Basically, he was telling me where to live in the United States and where not to live. I was actually looking at moving to New Orleans at the time. And he's like, yeah, you don't want to do that. It turns out he identified himself later as Saint Germain. And so like, oh yeah, purple is his color and whatever. And again, I didn't know any of this stuff. But yeah, it took me years later. Also, some of the symbols that were given to me were alchemical symbols. So thanks to one of my sayings around here is like, when you have a question you know, it's like, instead of to the back cave, it's to the Google. And so it's like, okay, here's a symbol I've seen. And a lot of times Google will have, what that symbol is or where it comes from.
I
And
saw
then,
my ex-mother-in-law, my first husband's mom, after she passed, she kept like approaching like this just spirit, just I just only knew she was there, but didn't really see anything. It was just there. And then finally it's like one day I was like, you gotta stop this. Like I feel like I'm going crazy. Like I was talking a while ago, like, am I going mentally ill here? And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go in the closet and I'm gonna open the door. And if you're not there, then I'm gonna know I was just crazy and this is crap. But if you're there, I was expecting to prove myself wrong. So I went and took a breath, opened up the closet door, and in front of there's a full-length mirror in the back of the closet. As soon as I opened it up, in front of that full-length mirror was a deep purple, like a lava lamp, like swirl
yeah,
up and down like this, deep purple. But it was like hovering off the ground about like that. If I had to guess, maybe 3-4 foot tall. And I'm like, slammed the door and jumped to my bed and covered up. I wasn't prepared to see anything. I was supposed to prove myself crazy, prove myself wrong. Nothing was going to be there.
yeah, I'm definitely with you there. Careful what you ask for, because sometimes you get it.
Yes. Well, it's been so great. I don't want to take up all your evening. Is there anything else that you wanted to share? Or did you want to sing a little for us?
I having been an opera singer, and a church soloist and whatever, I know what my voice should sound like, and I don't have that anymore
Oh, I love that river. Could you just do a
because
little bit of the river?
I'm out of practice, and again, German's the first language I learned, so it's still the German songs I still have, the Italian songs I still have,
Anything
French
you
Christmas
like.
songs I still have. Well, here, let me talk about this. So, part of the near-death experience prerequisite is that you die, you come back, and then you write a book.
Yeah,
So,
very
uh,
much.
there's too much glare on this. Well, anyway, so I have a book. I have a book that's called The Alchemist's Heir, like heir apparent.
Okay.
And basically, it is a grandfather who is kind of like the Merlin, and the grandson who is the young King Arthur. But it's grandpa who knows Reiki, and he's had a past life experience or two. He has two dogs. One's called Kuan Yin and one's called Siddhartha. But he basically teaches his 15-year-old grandson some metaphysical things, including Reiki, and it helps him to address a bully in high school, as well as to help him kind of develop into a more well-rounded high school student.
Okay.
So this is kind of a primer for people who are wanting to learn more about metaphysics. It's not about me talking about my near-death experience. And it's actually been, I've had actually a couple of school systems write to me and ask, hey, do you have a teacher's edition? So that's one thing I'm working on, is to get a
Cool.
teacher edition ready.
That is
Um,
awesome.
then
Congratulations on that.
thank you. And then the next book I wrote was called Guitars, Cigars, and Tiki Bars, A Guy's Guide to Spirituality.
That's cool.
And it's basically two guys sitting in a tiki bar, slowly getting drunk. And the one guy is lamenting to the other guy about, why do I have all these abilities? Why do I have Reiki? Why can I astral project? Why give me all of these things and I can't do what I want to do with them? I can't fix people that don't want to be fixed. And so it goes all the way to the last chapter of him talking to this guy, but you never hear this other guy speak. But he responds to the guy, so you have to kind of imagine what question he's asking. It's like if I say, hey, how are you doing? In your mind, you'd be like, I'm fine, how are you? And then he replies, I'm doing great. Well, I don't write his side of it. I only write the first character's part until the last chapter. The last chapter is finally when he speaks. And the surprise is that he's actually not talking to a different guy. He's talking to himself.
Okay.
But it is a physical self that exists in the future. And that physical self has astral projected back
Cool.
to this timeline to encourage him to keep doing what he's doing. Because that's one of the things I do when I learned about my past lives, is that I astral project back to my previous lifetimes at the time of their transition. I offer them Reiki. I explain to them why the transition is necessary, because they're not really pretty, but why it's necessary for a continual soul's development. And just like other people have helped me go up the tunnel with them, I now help them go up the tunnel in their lifetime. And then once they're up the tunnel, then I snap back into my meat suit.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah, it's a weird
You're just a cool
reality.
guy.
Like I
I
said,
mean,
I
you are
have a split
gifted.
personality. I have a very left brain, a very right brain. And
I think you're a genius.
Oh
Really.
God. Would you write my ex-wife and tell her that?
Yeah, I think you're a genius. I mean, yeah.
So one thing they teach you in Silva training is that if you use your mind, not your brain, your mind, in a different way, then you are like geniuses. Because that's what makes a genius. They realize their brain is a sloppy meat organ and their mind is really the controller. And then once you start directing your mind, as opposed to let it be passive, that's when you become a genius. And so you don't have to be Albert Einstein or whatever. When you start realizing you have a mind and that you can direct it, that's when you become a genius.
And I think before that point, we could be disabled because we're trying to fit into a box that we don't belong in.
Oh, good God. I could go on and on and on. Again, what reality did you choose to participate in? You know, are you, there are so many experiments and rides in this amusement park that are solely designed to break you down, because they want you to be they want you to be a mass consumer. They want you to be a mouth breather. They want you to eat food, drink toxics, die and move on. And if you are just looking at the three-dimensional here and now, the water is toxic, The earth is toxic. The meds we take are toxic. The stuff that surrounds us in paint and air and cosmetics, toxic, toxic, toxic. So just in the physical plane, there are a myriad of things out there that are trying to break you down. But then if we start applying the metaphysical aspect of that, okay, well, so I thought someone loved me, but it turns out they were lying to me. Or I thought the job was going to be this when I interviewed, but now it's that. Or I bought, a big ticket item under one set of circumstances, but now it turns out it's another set of circumstances. All these duplicities that they talked about to me when I was in my near-death state. All of these things that you think you can count on and you discover you cannot. And so it inherently creates this angst because there really is no security other than what you can build within yourself. People don't have that awareness a lot of times. And that's what my next book is going to be about, basically, is to make people realize you guys are spiritual masters. You just opted to be in this crazy place and you had to forget about it. Well, I'm going to remind you, in order to be here, these are all the things you need to already have known and accomplished. And so you're actually a spiritual badass MFer. You just forgot about it temporarily. So I'm going to nudge you and remind you, and maybe that'll give you a little more bandwidth. So when someone cuts you off in traffic, you just go, yeah, you're just playing a role. I get it. As opposed to rah, 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 and you spontaneously, have Tourette's.
Okay. Well, that's a happy note.
There you go.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I hope to talk to you later.
Thank you, Peggy, very much. My pleasure.
Bye.